here in our US hub alongside Felipe and Colin over the last year. It was about a year ago that we hosted our very first call with a group of people who just seemed to be inspired by the general call to action of the economy of Francesco, which is to sort of take up the call to build a new moral economy. And it really was inspired by a letter that Pope Francis sent to young people all over the world, asking us to really reflect on the implications of our faith lineage in building new paradigms that could serve humanity and really respect the integrity of our planet and support human development and equitable frameworks for the future economy. And so we've been on this journey of really deep reflection over the last year of trying to understand how we might translate the tenets of this faith tradition and other faith traditions and beyond into real action today that can help inspire a new economy. And I think many people have been feeling that we're on the precipice of this paradigm shift, that there is so much that the world is aching for to change, whether it's the urgency of climate change, the urgency of global health challenges, and also in this country of moving to one of plurality. And so I think we are just deeply honored and inspired by everything that's happened over the course of the last year within this US Hub community. We started our conversations a year ago. And just to give you a sense of where we've been, we convened about 5 gatherings of this kind that collectively reached about 1,200 people, just to create spaces for conversation across different types of communities and disciplines that were generally anchored in this kind of shared vision for a new moral economy and the ways in which our faith tradition could help inspire that through the values that have been distilled over time. We also convened 2 intensive workshops with pioneering groups of people. We did one this spring, right as COVID was settling in the United States, on spiritual community building for a new economy, where people basically took upon themselves a month of intensive peer-to-peer reflection and work. And then we did one this August on the shared ownership economy. So we know that in our Catholic social justice tradition in particular, there's been deep emphasis on principles of subsidiarity or kind of decentralized decision-making and cooperative economic principles. And so we really tried to take some of that and reflect on how that could be relevant for our economy here in the US today moving forward, to build shared ownership structures that would promote equity and shared prosperity. So we had a group of about 50 folks that went through that workshop. Some of them are here today, so they could probably weigh in on the chat on what that experience was like if anyone has questions. And then moving forward, we are planning to do another workshop at the beginning of 2021 for investors. So those who are interested in trying to allocate and channel financial capital in deep alignment with these principles. Colin, if you could just share some slides, I'm going to give folks a sense of why we wanted to convene you all today. So I think many of you know that we've been on a journey of, given the COVID-19 pandemic, of making plans and readjusting and making new plans and readjusting. So the initial intention was to gather thousands of young people in Assisi this past spring. That was rescheduled for November and then eventually moved fully online. So while of course many of us would love to be in person in Assisi, sharing the energy of that space and time together, we've also really been kind of honored and excited to participate over the last couple of days and into tomorrow in a global online event. So there have been events and talks streaming over the course of the last couple of days and going into tomorrow from Assisi. And from all over the world, there have been about 2,000 change makers from different corners of the planet that have been participating, and it's open to the public. So if you haven't tuned in yet, we just wanted to make sure you were aware of how you could tune into the live stream. You very simply would just go to this link that's here, and we can drop that in the chat too. And then Colin, if you jump to the next slide. So there are many incredible speakers, interactive sessions, and as Georgia was mentioning at the outset of this call, there have been some live proposals for action and shared collaboration that have been getting underway. But also there were just some pretty phenomenal things we wanted to point out in the agenda. The good thing is, if you weren't able to make these times, you can go back to the live stream and rewind it. It's one of the benefits of all this stuff being online, and watch it if you're inspired to do so. So you can see the full program on the website of what's been happening through the Global Economy Francesco event. But there have been some phenomenal speakers over the last couple of days and yet to come. And tomorrow there will be a message from Pope Francis to the youth around the world who are participating and taking up this call to action. All right, and so for today's agenda, what we wanted to do is continue to really spotlight the areas of praxis, those who are kind of taking up these principles and trying to embody them in the work that they're doing. And this is really because we believe that this space that we're trying to convene through our Economy of Francesco hub here can be a space for us to dialogue on how we translate these sort of big aspirational, bold visions and concepts into real life change in our communities. So we know we always want to build that kind of connective tissue. We have to deeply examine the values and the philosophies that drive us and underpin everything we do and continue to bring a critical eye to those. But then we also want to make sure that we're not losing touch with reality and that we're deeply engaged and participatory in how we're living out our lives. And so we have a few speakers today that we're going to interview just so you could get a bit of a sense of their work. And then we're going to break out into discussion groups, and then we will come back and discuss some next steps. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Felipe.
Super excited to welcome Molly Hemstreet from the Industrial Commons. To me, Molly and the Industrial Commons represents a very powerful vision of, we all know the Highlander Center's importance in civil rights. Molly talks about their work as an industrial version of the Highlander Center for today in our changing economy. So Molly, could you just give us a sense of what's some of the 5-year vision you have for the industrial economy and some of the industrial commons and some of your enterprises that you have? Give us a little bit of sense of where they are today and where you imagine they might grow over the years.
Sure. So thank you so much. I really appreciate being in this space. And I also want to see a lot of friends and allies and people that have helped us get this far, particularly CCHD. We wouldn't be where we are at all without their support. So I think what's so wonderful about this is the flourishing. I love that you used that word earlier on about a lot of seeds that have been planted over time. So again, I'm the co-executive director of the Industrial Commons. We're based here in Western North Carolina, and I also helped to found Opportunity Threads, which is a cut and sew plant as well. And what we really like to think about our work is a true ecosystem. And I think that just speaks so much to this conversation we're trying to have, where work is not divided from the care for the planet. And I think it's so wonderful now that we're thinking about our economies in terms of environmental language and thinking about ecosystems. So that's really what we're trying to build here in Western North Carolina, is an ecosystem that looks at the dignity of work and uplifts particularly a new economy that can work for everyone. And we're doing that by building out employee-owned companies, also by converting small businesses, and then really by building these small and growing cooperatives into industry networks. And so just to name a few of them, Opportunity Threads was the one that we started. It now has over 60 workers in it, and we're looking at purchasing a new facility and growing even further. We think, to your point about a vision, probably within the next few years, that could be upwards of 100 workers. Many of those are Mayan immigrant Guatemalans. And our focus in our cut and sew plant is all upcycled or recycled materials. So we're not necessarily making new things. We're taking old things and making them into new cherished items. One of the things we do every week is we upcycle about 60 to 70,000 t-shirts. So that's a really wonderful project. And then out of that, again, to thinking about the interconnectedness and the ecosystem nature of things, we started a really neat textile reclamation company called Material Return. And so what we do there is we take everybody's waste, kind of think of it as composting for the textile industry, because we're trying to live out, what is our in industry and what are we doing here? And we're mainly a textile and furniture company. So we're not throwing that out. We're saying, let's put some new energy into this skill that we've had. So we are now creating that as an employee-owned company as well. And in their first year, they upcycled or recycled almost close to 1 million pounds of materials that would have been put into the landfill. And we're now going to be making that into new products. And we're partnering with another ally we saw on the phone, Ethics, to try to do get that good products sold into the market. Another really interesting company that are cooperative we started is this whole idea of how you take small companies and you link them together. So the Carolina Textile District is a network of over 30 small producers. They're not necessarily all cooperatives themselves, but they come together in a cooperative governance structure. And that actually represents hundreds and hundreds of workers. And we've been able to pay out through the ecosystem over $2 million just in the last 4 or 5 months to keep those people's doors open. And that has been really, really powerful. And I think there's a little video you all can share. So again, this idea of linking ourselves, not just being pure cooperatives, being cooperative networks. And then we realized we needed a lot of support. So we started a cooperative bookkeeping and HR system that's run by 2 really wonderful women of color, one Indigenous and one from the Black community here, to say, like, we've got to build these businesses and then we need to build the infrastructure around them. So those are just a few of the cooperative we're starting. And I think our vision into the future is to build more and more in those, link those cooperatives out. And now we've actually bought a brownfield. So we're going to be developing close to 30 acres in our downtown to build this out as a visual vision for what our community can really look like.
Molly, thanks so much. And I've been so inspired by how quickly you're able to pivot as a network and organization. At the onset of the pandemic, you were so quick to start making PPE, partnering with your local hospital. The depth of your relationships with just all kinds of elected officials, local partners, it allowed us in the co-op that I run for the charter schools in DC to buy and source a lot of PPE directly from you, and just the solidarity you exercise with other folks. And I want to just draw out a little bit more of a direct appreciation for some of the individuals and how their lives are affected. I know in our February call, we heard from Walter, who is one of the kind of worker owners of Opportunity Threads that's grown from a handful of people sewing, mostly Guatemalan immigrants, now to more than 60 people working in that. The 200,000 square feet. Tell us a little bit about the scale of this enterprise here. And I think what's exciting to me is that you've already accomplished so much scale, starting with the worker center you were organizing 10 years ago, and how that persistence over time has really gotten to a place where there's so much maturity now. And I think give us a sense of maybe 1 or 2 stories of particular individuals that we can help ground the imagination here.
Sure. So I just want to name one thing, because I think, again, what I love about the economy of Francesco is that interconnection between the economy and the environment. And we often use, that whole environmental idea of the edge effect, where what I think is unique about our economy is we are trying to build this economy, but we're not throwing out the interface with the old. Like, we need these, traditional manufacturers. We actually have a really neat program where we go in and we help, again, we help through conversions, but we also help build frontline voice for traditional manufacturers as well. And so I think it's really, when we're thinking about the economy, we also have to think about the intersection with the economy that we're transforming as well. And that's also been able to help us scale, because I think everybody is really eager for something that can work for everyone. So I think I wanted to name that. So I just wanted to kind of lift up Bob. Bob is a wonderful person. I think that's just also, you think about Western North Carolina, we have a lot of, traditional white workers that have been here. We work a lot with the Indigenous workers, with the Black community. We're very proud that our organization is 40% people of color, even though most of our population, we're closer to like 80% white folks. So I think it's really important, just the justice and the voice piece as we move forward. And Bob was a really great younger white guy, had gone to, gotten his high school diploma, gone to community college, and now has a really wonderful team of some people. We identified him. He was just working on the plant floor. We identified him through a really neat program we have called Work and Burke. And I think that's another wonderful part of the economy of Francesco, is the focus on younger people. So we do outreach to over 5,000 young people. And before COVID, they were all coming through our cooperatives. We were having close to 800 8th graders come into our cooperative ecosystem and learn about that. So it's like, we don't want them, there are a lot of us unlearning how to be part of an economy, but there are a lot of people that we want to have them be their first taste of, this is how you get along, and this is what enough is, and this is how you care for others and steward an economy to the future. So Bob is one of those people. He can make anything. He's built a wonderful team. He's now the CEO. He would never have seen himself as such. He's now the CEO of a really growing company, and bringing in and just, bringing in a lot of other people that are going to be around him and see him as leaders, and develop a new level of leadership of really what it means to be manufacturers, and bring pride into that. I think it's not always about what's the work you're doing. It's how you're doing the work you're doing. And we want to be people not to see themselves as just workers, but that they're actually building for a future that can work for everyone.
Well, Molly, just kind of to leave us, we're going to shift here in a minute, but one question I always have is, how do we go deeper in our own individual journeys and the personal faith journey we're each on, and understanding the interconnected systemic and global challenges. Maybe just give us a little taste of your own journey and kind of what this Francesco is inspiring for you as you see others in this movement.
Sure. So I was really lucky and very privileged to be part of the Living School. I think maybe there were other folks that were coming in from the Center for Action and Contemplation. And I think, coming from growing up from faith, know that what we're asked to give back, but also really that idea of like the journey is that journey inward. And once you do touch the divine and see that within yourself, then there's just this desire to help others find that within themselves. And work, that's what we all do. We work. And so our work needs to be able to give people a path, whether you're working at the chicken processing plant, whether you're sitting at a sewing machine, whether you're picking up textile waste. It needs to be a path from which people can also encounter their true self and that divine within. And I think that's what we hope to do too, is to have a strong spiritual base and a strong place where there's true self-discovery in the work that we do. So I'm really appreciative. That's been my journey for the last few years, and hopefully to bring both the contemplation, keep that going, but the action as well.
Beautiful, Molly. One more thing, actually, John Mundell from Economy of Communion asked the question, how do you finance, Molly, and your work? Just a quick question. I know you are raising capital to, the real estate project. You just bought a 28-acre facility to consolidate a lot of enterprise in the same place. I know there's various enterprises, but there is ways to invest. And if you want to talk to me, I'm happy to help connect you to the right people. But anything else want to say about how you're financing some of your growth?
Yeah, so the Industrial Commons is a 501c3. And again, I do this everywhere, but just thanks to people like CCHD that have helped us, and there are many other organizations that have helped us. And then the cooperatives that we set up are LLCs. It's hard to be a traditional cooperative in North Carolina, so we set them up as LLCs, and they will transition to the employees over time. So we really try to have a robust income stream. So we're very proud that next year, 40% of our income coming into the Industrial Commons is coming from the enterprises themselves. That's why we're trying to work and figuring out this market. So the products we're making are good products that can be used, and we hope that you'll buy some of the products that we have. I think there was something about the chat, and that's why again we're partnering with folks like Ethics. But we're really trying to build out a sophisticated portfolio of how we do this work, so that there's the enterprises and the co-ops themselves are sustainable. We do a lot of business work so that they can survive in the marketplace themselves. And then we're also grant fundraising, and then we're also looking for patient capital investment as we take on some of these much bigger programs. And so talk to Felipe, he's always talking to me as we try to scheme and scale these projects up so that thousands and thousands of workers can have these opportunities.
Thank you so much, Molly. We'll turn it now to Elizabeth and Jessica.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Molly. That was awesome. So Jessica, thanks for unmuting yourself. It looks like you're ready to go. So we have with us next Jessica Cook, who is the Managing Director of Ascension Investment Management. They're a socially responsible investment advisor affiliated with Ascension, which many of you may know is a faith-based healthcare organization. Jessica's also been deeply instrumental in forming what is today the Catholic Impact Investing Collaborative, which I was really excited to learn about, having been in the field of impact investing for a long time and wondering ways to better integrate that space with our Catholic faith. I think many of us are perhaps on this journey of kind of a collective awakening around what we do with our money. So recognizing that how we invest our money, whether it's our retirement savings or community-based investments or institutional investments. Perhaps we have money in the stock market if you have a 401k, like these questions of how we increasingly align our spending and our investments with principles that are consistent with our faith and the vision for the world that we're talking about today is something that we need a lot of education and support around today. And so we thought it'd be interesting to talk to an institution that is trying to really align their institutional investments with a set of principles that are inspired by Catholic social teaching. So Jessica, just to start, I wanted to ask you if you could share a little bit with us about how Catholic social teaching and the mission of Ascension as a faith-based healthcare institution has translated into an investment imperative for the organization. So how have you made that connection between those principles, values, and ideas in your actual investment strategy?
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this, and I'm so grateful to be included in the conversation. As you said, Ascension really came together because the sponsoring religious orders of the healthcare ministries that came together as Ascension really established the foundation of our firm and who Ascension Investment Management is and how we work to invest to further a Catholic mission. From day one, incorporating a Catholic socially responsible investment policy, I mean, it's really being embedded in, you know, our team's culture, our team's actions. It's thinking about the mission, it's thinking about the philosophy behind it. So, you know, we were established to invest assets with a Catholic socially responsible investment policy. In the beginning, it was really merely thinking about, you know, what should we not be investing in? What do we not want to support? We do not want to violate, you know, our Catholic mission. But, you know, around the 2013, 2014, I really, you know, as the Daughters of Charity, that really engaged me into thinking, now it's the time to turn the conversation into how can we be furthering a Catholic mission? How can we be thinking about sourcing investments that are actually going to be addressing those critical needs in the poor and vulnerable, whether it be social considerations like healthcare and food, education, and especially just as important, how are we going to take care of the world's environment? What are we going to do to, you know, transition to the world into a cleaner place? And how can we use our investment portfolio to really further that? So the team took a really hard look into, you know, what can we do better? What can we do to think about what's out there that we can invest, and do so with knowing that, you know, every dollar is important. Every dollar saved is important. Every basis point earned is furthering the missions. But we wanted to get both. We wanted to make sure that we can invest that, get that return, but get the impact. And so that was in 2014 that we really started sourcing these private investments, thinking like, here's a housing project in Latin America that's, you know, it's not fancy, it's not big, it's for people that are making very low, you know, it's first-time homeowners, very low incomes. You know, could we do something where we establish a church in a community and, you know, grow a development center there? And we started sharing these stories, whether it be food production or buying a pharmacy in Africa. Could we find those investments, source them, and really take the private approach of like measuring the impact over time to show it wasn't just pictures and stories. You know, we're working with the managers to aggregate that data to prove out over time that there is impact being generated, and the return. So it's something that I'm super, super proud of. It's something that I'm most passionate about at AIM, and I've taken a real leadership role in furthering that program. And we've aggregated a group of Catholic investors that have really taken it upon themselves with the mission of accomplishing both that return and that impact. And it's been really meaningful.
Thanks, Jessica. I think that point around aggregation of capital and other investors to build a movement in this direction is important, because it's what helps shape the market and changes the supply and demand equation. I am continually inspired by the ways in which faith-based investors were actually the earliest pioneers of what we today might call impact investing or socially responsible investing. So in many cases, especially in the United States, it was orders of religious sisters that were putting their retirement funds on the line and saying, you know what, we need to divest our endowments or our retirement funds from certain asset classes like fossil fuels, and really helped sort of build and shape a movement in that direction. I wonder, today, I think there's a real call to action to try and go beyond divestment. So we've been removing money from certain assets that we feel are not ethically or socially aligned. So how do we go from divestment to more proactive investment in cooperative structures like what Molly just shared with us, that are building an economy that works for all? And I think part of what many of us are grappling with, of course, are these questions around how we balance that impact and returns equation you just spoke to, and answer this question of what's enough from a return standpoint. So if we're going to go by certain kind of conventional ideas about market rate return, we might kind of rub up against some tense conversations or questions, especially if you're working with an organization's assets, right? Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you could share a little bit with us about some of the challenges that you're working through now, some of the areas for growth. As you look forward for Ascension, what are the growing edges for you all in this work? Where do you go from here?
Absolutely. Well, the challenges were real. I mean, they are real. They continue to be real. You know, balancing the need to, you know, to measure a return, what's enough, and, you know, what's enough impact. What we did to overcome one of those challenges is really create an advisory committee to help us assess, you what impacts, what is the impact that we're trying to achieve? Is this enough? Is this really, would we think about housing and education, healthcare, food, the environment? We didn't want it just to be about our voice and what we deemed as this is impactful. We wanted that collaborative to come together and help us think through those issues and problems and challenges. And so, I mean, that created the foundation back in 2014. And we really, at the time, our chief investment officer, David Erickson, he was like, I don't want perfect to be, I think it's a perfect the enemy of good. I mean, we knew that there were going to be challenges. We knew that there were going to be obstacles along the way, but we didn't want that to stop us from allocating. We wanted dollars to get to work, and we wanted to learn the lessons along the way. And we knew that we could judge a financial return, but it was the impact that with the advisory committee that helped us grow as a team. And what I think, the sky's the limit for us, what we're doing right now. I mean, we're being so creative with the managers to think about how can we just ring fence certain parts of your strategy, the truly impactful parts that we're seeing, and create the standalone investment so that we know that that's what we want, that's the part we want. I was just thinking about, I was telling this story this week about a fossil fuel company they're actually transitioning into a cleaner world, deploying solar and wind into Chile. So we didn't want their entire product. We wanted to invest in their solar and wind projects in Chile, these small, very small scale that are touching small city centers, rural communities that aren't getting that access. And we're working with these managers to find creative solutions to do just that. And that's where we're furthering. That's where we're pushing the edges, is, finding those traditional managers that we want to support as they transition, but we don't want to support all of the investments. We're going to find and pinpoint that impact and support that. And that, those dollars to work are going to be really meaningful. And the more and more money, the more and more, that we can aggregate that and push it out there, the more opportunities that are become available. And so we're talking about things right now about let's really focus on the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion. And maybe we'll create a separate product for that right now. I mean, we're pushing all kinds of boundaries to, we're never going to be strict in this is what we defined it in 2014, so this is what it has to be in 2021. We're working together with this community of Catholic investors and really trying to make good change and learn from each other and learn from, the SEEK has been amazing, the Catholic Impact Investing Collaborative. I mean, what I'm learning with this group, I am so blessed that I found these people back in 2014 and growing with them and seeing what, promoting, getting more and more impact dollars out there among the Catholic institutions. There's been so much growth, and I am really proud to be a part of it. I'm sorry, I overtalk.
No, this is great, Jessica. Thank you. And the creativity you're describing with fund managers is really inspiring. We have a lot of room to grow in the US, I think in particular, and so we need institutionally and individual leaders like yourself. I'm curious, just to close out here, is there a call to action or a resource you might want to share with this group of folks to kind of take the next step in their own journeys around thinking about how they better align capital with their values?
Well, I would say, to the point I just made earlier, to be afraid of getting it wrong is not doing anything. Move forward. I mean, and use your peers, use us, use anyone. Use SEEK as a resource. We've got plenty of passion among us to help educate and embrace this community. If you want to accomplish it, there are so many resources out there to do it. Don't let the fear that it's not going to be perfect stop you from trying to make a change.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was amazing. And I did want to ask, and I see some folks are starting to chime in now, if anyone wants to share any takeaways from the session with Muhammad Yunus from the global event on finance and humanity, please do share those. I think this is such an important conversation. Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to pass it over to you, Colin.
Thank you so much.
Colin? Maybe froze there. Erika, Rich, go ahead. I'm so glad to introduce you. Welcome from Alma Backyards. We'd love to hear a little about your story and what brings you here today and kind of some of your work's manifestation of the kind of Francesco with your work.
Yeah, thank you everyone. My name is Erika Cuellar and
Richard Garcia.
And we're here in Compton, California right now at one of our urban farms. Our organization, nonprofit organization, is called Alma Backyard Farms. And I'll just share a little bit about what we do, and as we wait for Colin to come back on. we both have actually worked with Colin quite a lot in the past, and so our paths have crossed. Now with Alma, we utilize urban agriculture as a means to reconnect people, to reclaim lives, repurpose land, and reimagine community. We do this throughout Los Angeles to really, as a way to reconnect folks who are re-entering from incarceration into neighborhoods that are food insecure, so that folks are learning how to feed and nourish lives. And so we have 3 core programs that we do. We have a job training program for folks who were incarcerated, focused on urban agriculture, carpentry, plumbing, irrigation. We also have a youth education program to teach children how to become environmental stewards and to really learn how to be caretakers of our common home. And we have a farm stand in which we make food accessible and affordable to the community. And so I think for us, the economy of Francesco is something that we're living out every day. And for like, what I think is interesting is for indigenous cultures, the economy and the environment is not separate. It's one. We don't separate ourselves from the land, from nature. We are. And so I think that we move in that direction, and with that in mind, that we're not separated from it. So I'm gonna let Richard maybe share a little bit more about what we do.
Hello everyone. I believe that part of the framework in regard to how we approach urban agriculture, helping formerly incarcerated people re-enter, helping feed food insecure families. Part of that framework is Laudato Si, Francis's exhortation for us to care for our common home. And so I don't know if Colin is still on, but I think the sort of paths that crossed early on in our exploration of pastoral work, the thought that comes to mind really, okay, there's Colin, he's back on, is when we speak of economy of Francesco, I can't help but think of the line graph that we all follow with regards to how well the money is doing in the stock market. And we are concerned if it dips or if it rises. And in no way am I denying the importance of money, but I think the line graph we have to follow in enacting any economy that resembles the life of Francis is downward mobility. And so the trajectory would be down. And I say this because it's really in powerlessness that we've managed to find our power. And I think just the way the world is, I think there was a point of bringing up divestment of power, but I think that was the most poignant image I have of Francis of Assisi was I'm Catholic schooled through and through, from first through high school seminary, college, graduate school. And back in the day when we had VHS players, it would be a big deal to watch movies that would span across all the classrooms. And the one movie that I remember, besides Disney's cartoons, was Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. And I think I was like in the 5th grade. And then you could hear the class gasp when Francis took off his clothes, right? Because that was like a big deal. And I think as a little kid, I could laugh and think like, wow, that was kind of funny. You don't see that growing up. But I think as a grown man, at least I think so, it's that act of shedding power that actually will empower. And I think that's what's key about how we've carried on our work here at Alma. The economy has taken a downturn for a lot of people where food and basic necessities are hard to meet. So one thing that Alma Backyard Farms has done in terms of pivoting some of its movements is to pivot and follow the downward mobility, where if people cannot come in person to source food at the farm stand, we've pivoted so that we could provide grocery kits at the curbside. But I think, you know, it's you know, I appreciate Colin for inviting us to this, because I think the thing we can share is at this time where things seem to be taking a downturn, we're very concerned about where to put our money. And I think we've heard it from different foundation representatives that more foundations may be holding more tightly their purse strings. That's understandable. But I think, like, especially in times like this, if you look at the, not just the trajectory and the downward mobility, but if you look at like where God's revealed God's self in human history, it's in moments of crises, you know, and it's usually in places that stink, from a manger to a tomb. And then in the case of Francis, it was in a time when the church was pretty scandalous. And I think there is parallels with now. And so I think, like, as much as we could encourage with the economy of Francesco to how do we navigate through this world? I think it's yes, I think we have to remain vigilant with the pandemic, but I think more than ever, the economy of Francesco would proclaim a vigilance to how God will emerge and reveal himself now. And I think that's something we are privileged to see every day, because our work is with urban agriculture. It's in places that are food insecure. So if you want to know what our specifications are, if I was approaching this as a farmer, I would look to a bottom line where I'd have to make sure that every seed I'd sow would be sold. The economy that we employ is one where every seed we sow has to be shared. That's primary. So I think just for the paradigmatic shift, it's, you know, in terms of specifications on how we approach farming, the places we look for are underutilized land in food insecure areas, meaning places that people would probably care less about. The people we choose to stand with are people who are re-entering, also people that are easily despisable. And then the food we choose to grow, high quality organic, we want to dismantle the sense of food elitism, where that good food everyone is deserving of. So I think in some way, you know, we hope to live out the spirit of Francis. And I think one thing that, you know, we're identified as essential workers. You know, like, I think that it's in the least likely places that we have to turn, and in those places we may come in contact with the presence of God. So I think that's the bit of our farming. I also just have spent quite a few moments speaking to folks on Zoom, and there's a lot of surveys conducted with foundations who have been very generous, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing without their support. But one thing I think, you know, I could pose to switching the paradigm is I know that organizations like us, and we're a small business, there's a lot of emphasis on on increasing impact and facilitating evaluations that are quantitative. I think with the shift that's taking place, especially in light of COVID-19, could we examine where we are impacting? And I'll share this story, and I won't go on anymore in this rant, but it's like this. I could tell you we will train 100 people every year formerly incarcerated with skills that will build them up so that they could become more employable, where we may also employ them. But the point in me teaching somebody how to operate a circular saw and to pull that trigger, knowing that I'm working with folks who probably pulled the trigger of a gun, the real impact is returning a sense of trust. It's economy of trust. And so if we can build, quantitatively, yeah, we could push people through those lessons, but to really examine the effect of trust and empowering somebody to now believe that his hands do not cause harm, but could create something good, that's something that could be examined over a 15 to 30-year period. And I can't put a price tag to that, but I do know that the value added to that person's life and that person's life adding value to other people's lives around him is exponential. And I think that to us here at the farm, and I think we share this, I think that's at the heart of the economy of Francis of Assisi. And I don't know much. I'm more Jesuit educated. So is Erika. You wanna...
Yeah, I think, sorry, I got knocked off this thing. This almost never happens to me, but I just we're gonna transition into breakout rooms in a minute. And I think Rich and Erika leave us with a ton to reflect on. And I think, so as we kind of go from this, Myra Hemstreet's amazing work with cooperative economics to like a higher view of impact investing and how do we invest capital differently, to this deeply profound theological and lived action that the thing I would have introed is that Rich and Erika have been living this for the last 16 years since I met them both, have been living in Economy Francesco in an incredible way. And so I love hearing this theological reflection, but I think we'd like to invite everybody into this conversation as well. And so we're going to do a couple breakouts through right now with 4 to 6 folks. And I think some of the questions is kind of, Felipe's putting up questions now, but what manifestations of Economy Francesco do you see that most inspire you? What's one thing you hope to do related to this in the upcoming months? And I think I love Jessica's comment on don't be afraid, combined with even just what Rich says there, of just a very different way of not just trending that line of the stock market, but what's an economy that actually respects human dignity and seeing it from a different lens. So let's go into breakouts, and I think we'll have around 15 minutes, Felipe. Felipe is gonna break us up and maybe share a little bit more details on how we're gonna do that, Felipe, and then we'll come back and do another concluding piece.
Great. I'm going to move you into rooms now. Those 4 questions I just shared can start with just a brief introduction and reaction, and then kind of what's speaking to you. So we'll call you back in about 14 or 15 minutes here. You should be able to see a room to click to join your breakout rooms now, and we'll come back in a few minutes. If you're able to, you can click on your phone or your device or computer to join whatever breakout room if you want at this moment, if you haven't done so already. No worries if not. We're going to enter into small discussions. Welcome back. Any highlights from kind of your small group? I was calling a few people to share what was being shared in their group. John, what was your discussion like? And Jessica, sorry, I'd love to hear from you too. Then we'll go to Georgia next.
Sure. Hi everyone, this is Jessica. I got to be in the group with Nikki Santos and Richard and Erika and John, and we had a great discussion. I think we all really appreciated all of the speakers, and we're talking about one thing that we landed on was sort of like the importance of doing everything that we do sort of the best possible. I think I was like appreciating Richard and Erika talking about learning from their experience of needing to create really high quality produce, even as they maintain their like heart and social mission. And so I was thinking about that. Yeah, just.
Thank you. Pat or Marianne, I'll go to John first. Any other highlights for you, John, from your group? And then Pat McGrory and Marianne Comfort, love to hear just your reflections on our group.
I don't know about anything in particular, but I thought it was just great to meet, exchange ideas, and some good connections were made in terms of ways to move the ball forward a bit.
Bert, John Seeley, Don Mundell, Dan, any quick highlights?
Listening to Molly and then people in our small group says something that comes to mind is how these larger organizations and investment firms or what have you are interested in this can work with people at a grassroots level. That's really relevant to me. So that's something I'm thinking about.
Thank you. John Seeley, Patrick Murray, Dan Rierick.
Well, Felipe, we connected most recently at a social responsible investing conference, and that's been from many of our provinces, that's been a traditional angle, but this learning in regard to impact investing and with Catholic social teaching outlook, that's a new horizon. So we were grateful for that small group time to discuss that.
Beautiful. Open up to anybody who wants to share a highlight from their group, something that stuck out to them.
I can just share, in our small group, we had two people from Omaha, Nebraska, one the director of Catholic Charities USA. I think, Brian, maybe you should talk about this, but I'll just share my observation. We had a philosophy professor, Patrick Murray, talking about his commitment to the new economy. And then Brian said, well, Catholic Charities just invested $333,000 in a business incubator for immigrants in English and Spanish in Omaha. And we need Patrick's voice. So, that connection to help feed this synergy. And I knew about that group in Omaha from the very beginning, helping undocumented workers know the basics to start their own businesses and how empowering that is. Brian, do you want to say any more on that?
Thanks, I appreciate it. No, Catholic Charities USA had a call to innovation last year, and this worker center incubator won a $333,000 award, one of the 3 top best innovative ideas right now in worker engagement of Catholic Charities. And so we were trying to replicate it as well. And so when someone said they just come out of a philosophy economics department and want to connect with that practical stuff and the thinking as well as the very nitty gritty daily grind of making that happen. So I was glad to connect. I hope we can connect.
Thanks so much, Brian, Maria Teresa. Any other observations? Jessica, Tomasaro, Marianne, John Mundell?
I just want to say this is always an amazing thing because, so many nice and great things are happening with people with kindred spirits, and just to get together and be energized again and realize we have a lot of hope if we can create a direction we all move in together a little bit than separately. It gives me great hope despite the bad things that are happening. There's a lot of potential here when you combine good ideas and passion with investing and financial support. As one person who's invested a lot of our own personal money in startups around the world, I see the potential. If we just had more funding directed in the right directions, we could get a lot done. So it's a great thing.
Beautiful, John. Thank you. Marianne, your observations?
Yeah, I thought that our small group sharing basically continued what I thought was so powerful in the presentations, was just the variety of people who are committed to this work and the variety of ways that people are living it out. So I thought our small group just amplified that for me.
Thank you so much. Myra, I'd love to hear from you. Maddie, I'd love to hear from you. Any reactions in your group? Lynn, welcome back.
It was really, it has been inspiring to be back in the circle again with this community. And we were reflecting a great deal on many things, in particular the offering from Alma Farms and this call to this place for me that even when I'm thinking about it now, my hands pulse. Why? You know, why is those chakras in my hands are just buzzing? It's because there's something, you know, deeply enlivening about being grounded in what we're doing and following the call, really the heart, and going to the places where we're active, right on those edges, those raw edges, we come alive. There's color back in life. And I just spoke that while I was listening to that, the conversation around bringing those who are coming out of incarceration into a place where they're able to give to a community in need, where there's food insecurity, and how powerful that is as a restorative, regenerative place. And I feel that that's what we're being called to right now, is to be restorers of the creation. Our value to creation is that we do have hands and hearts that can be at that activity. And we can learn from the earth and the design of creation about how to do it. So that's alive in me. And then the last thing is I felt that cash can be a distraction to that. So making a space for existence of cash that is in harmony though with the larger organizing design, which we could call God, the generating organizing design.
Thank you so much, Myra. Anybody else want to offer a final piece? I think we'll shift into some of Elizabeth's and my reflections and next steps, and then kind of turn to a closing prayer here in just a few minutes, but feel free to jump in here. Elen, Julie, Maddie, anybody else? Well, I'm struck just what Myra shared about restoring and regenerative. One thing that I find in this space is that we're trying to hold space for so many things together, right? And I believe, my belief is that we're trying to create new connective tissue between different parts of the ecology we live in. And I see this as a larger social movement, the church, you know, Francis in the world, the spirit enlivening so many different communities, whether they call themselves religious or not. And I see that in the higher areas of finance and banking. I feel like people are renouncing things and trying to change things and trying to take risks, as Jessica talked. And then I see it very grounded with those who are putting their hands in the compost and the soil every day, tilling and watching the microbes that are beyond any of our comprehension, that are always alive in the world. And I think, how do we learn that regenerative practice that I think God teaches us through nature? And so for me, this is all a practice and in humility and learning, and honestly been a learning journey with you. But then also how we tend toward, Molly said, both the contemplation and the action. And I think finding where we feel those swells of energy to take action in the world. And I think 2 or 3 swells that I'll reflect on that I've felt this year were toward creating these workshops that were so vibrant for me in both April and May and August, and we'll probably do a couple more next year. And so please stay tuned for the kind of workshop space we'll create. And this is, intimate experience where we'll take personal transformation at the core of the workshop. What do you need to wrestle with and work on, and your most important work, and what is God calling for you? And we ask you to write about that, and then we ask peers to kind of comment on that in your small groups through the workshop prompts that we offer, and then also tending toward action together in groups towards making things real in the world. So that's one thing I've been feeling. A second thing is just the Friends of CCHD, recognizing that the Catholic Church isn't gathered in the normal ways this year, given all the restrictions and public health considerations. So the collection for, Catholic Campaign Human Development is actually going to be significantly lower this weekend. And so recognizing that, how do we support the community organizing, the economic development, the community kind of wealth building, regenerative wealth building activities of Alma Farms and so many others? How do we do that? So one question for me is, how do we support building new connective tissue between our dioceses, our parishes, and the local projects throughout, like the ones mentioned in Omaha and others, immigrant worker centers? So that's one desire I hope the space too, is to kind of create connective tissue between more folks, and help connect up institutions like the Catholic Campaign Human Development has been so vital for so many years. But then also, how do we imagine what's new? What's the next version of what we're being called to in this time to integrate ecology, the economy, and economists? And I think changing how economics is taught and thought is such a vital part of this too, for another generation of thinkers and practitioners. So those are a few things that I'm tying together, and I'll put a few little nodes of influence here in the chat in terms of things that I feel like have been vital for my imagination. I really do encourage you to share with you what's been inspiring for you as you think about Pope Francis's letter and the call and the invitation. And we do want to point out and map. And one of my hopes here is this year is to have some kind of visual mural board map where we can see so many of the different nodes that are emerging. Bert has an amazing thing in Portland, Oregon that he's been developing for the past year. And there's so many others of you that are deeply embedded in your communities. We want to know about that so we can connect that out and invite especially the younger generation to this work. So that's a little bit of what's emerging for me. I'll turn it to Elizabeth now.
Thanks, Felipe. So I think to help us wind down here, we wanted to bring everyone together specifically today because we wanted to stand in solidarity with the global event that's happening. So I just really do encourage you all to check out that program and see if you can tune into something. And then a reminder that we have an Economy of Francesco Slack channel. So if you wanted to circle up with this community of folks and share your impressions or ideas or things that you took away from that global program, that's a great space to do it. And most of all, I would say that what I'm really taking away from today is the vitality of a nourishing community like this. So in our small group, we were talking about how it is hard sometimes to live out a countercultural wisdom, especially when we've been steeped in and swimming in the waters of a particular economic philosophy or tradition, especially in this country, where neoliberal economics has been this dominant paradigm. And we can't even see or distinguish between that and a different set of ideas or philosophies about how the economy could work and what we might value. And so I think having a community like this that you can tap into to help you live out that countercultural wisdom is just so important. So I would encourage you to continue to find these spaces and continue to connect with one another. And also it's fun to remember that this Economy of Francesco US hub that we've been trying to convene alongside many other hubs around the world started because a handful of us were in search of that kind of nourishing community. Felipe, Colin, our friend Patrick, and I just started meeting to meditate and discuss together on a regular basis how we could bring our Catholic social teaching and formation together with our interest in the new economy. So it can start with a handful of people and maybe grow from there. And moving forward, I think we'd really like to try and set the table for others to do the same. So we're thinking, and we welcome your feedback and ideas. You have our email addresses, so just feel free to ping us. But what are those spaces that would be nourishing to you? What would that look like? We're obviously limited in the ways we can gather these days. So we're probably thinking about continuing these workshop formats, as Felipe mentioned, in these types of gatherings. But do small prayer groups resonate? Meditation groups? What are the things that would really help equip you to do this work better? We are also continuing to foster partnerships with other groups and institutions that we think can be vital allies in this work. So we're currently talking with the Franciscan Sisters of Mary and the Catholic Impact Investing Collaborative to team up on that early 2021 investor workshop that I mentioned earlier. If you have other ideas about institutional partnerships that we should try to foster in service of future topics or ideas, that's wonderful. Also, because all of us are doing this alongside other jobs and work. And so we want to continue to put momentum and build movement behind this, but that does require partnerships in more capacity. And then we really see, I'd say, an opening to try and bring the wisdom of Catholic social teaching to the world in new ways. So we know there are entrepreneurship and investing spaces that have been inspired by the Catholic Church. I think we're finding that there's this deep need and craving to bring that social justice element to fruition in the world today. And so I think we're starting to feel like this is the space to do that. we want you all to be those restorers that Myra was talking about earlier. So help us help you by setting the table to help you do that work. And thank you for your presence today. Really appreciate all of you.
Colin, we'll turn it to you.
Oh, yeah, I'll close with a final reflection and prayer in a minute. I just one other thought on this, and our small group came back a bit late, and I think just one. I think of these, like, I'll be totally honest, as we've done this over the last couple of years, I'm constantly very cynical, and I'm like, oh, create a couple good-hearted people, but then what if US and China never give up unbridled global capitalism? Like, are we really going to bring a new economy about? And I do think something that Julie Moon just shared in our group, in her engineering mindset, as she said, of economy of communion, 25 years ago, just saying, no, let's not just do an economy that's profit not, but that it does value the human. And Helen pulled an idea from Molly's presentation as well, on this idea of, like, let's actually be individuals who embrace, believe in, and create an economy that's not just profit not, but that is way more rooted in the respect of human dignity. My other final thought, and I think we have a new administration that's coming in. There's a lot of complications with that. However, a few days ago, the incoming president was on the 40th commemoration for Jesuit refugee service, and actually said they're going to increase 125,000 refugee spaces for people in this country. And Fauci was on that presentation as well. And there's just concrete things that are happening. And I actually go back to Jessica's thoughts of, let's be bold. Let's just keep being bold, and let's ask our policymakers to be bold and catch on with these ideas that the young get, and the young are going to keep embracing. But let's be bold in this next year. And so, anyways, with all this said, we're going to do two final blessings. One is going to be a commissioning of all you to be bold this year. But before that, our friend and dear colleague, and some of you might know this, but Elizabeth Garlow is actually getting married tomorrow, and was organizing a lot of this in New York, with some family, but with social distance, Zoom, blah, blah, blah. So I just want to do a quick blessing, everybody, on Elizabeth Garlow, who's been a beacon of light and hope. God, may you bless her as she enters this next chapter. Let her deepen her relationship with Paul and build family, community, and continue to be a beacon of light as we are inspired to follow her in building a new economy. And yeah, bless her days, her family, and all that in God's name. Amen.
Amen.
Finally.
Amen. Congrats.
Yeah, to Elizabeth. Finally, I think this downward mobility. I'm gonna share a short prayer of Ignatius, which is at the end of the spiritual exercises, which I think is just so rooted in let's maintain on that pulse of the spirit, and it's the Sujipe. And so, take, Lord, and receive all of our liberty, all of our understanding, all of our entire wills, all we have and call our own. You have given it all to us. To you, Lord, we return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give us only your love and your grace. That's enough for us. God, we ask that you bless us as we continue to try to flip this economy upside down, walk this path of downward mobility, live into this spirit of valuing every worker and building a new economy for those who are most left out, and that also protects our planet. Inspire our actions, and please help us be bold. Help us continue to be bold and support one another in these days. And we ask all that in God's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Have a blessed Thanksgiving, and keep an eye out for follow-up emails with calls to action that'll be coming in the not so far future. So, Felipe or Elizabeth, any other thoughts?
Thank you so much, everybody. So good to see
Thanks
you.
so much. Very
Thank you, guys.
Good to be with you.
Very good to see everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Take care.
Well done.
Yeah.